Hello and welcome to another edition of Meet the Red Cross. I'm Dave Griffith, the Executive Director for the Heart of Missouri chapter, and I have two guests that are going to be joining me today on the show. Our first guest is Kath Mayne, and Kath is one of our newest employees to the chapter as our disaster specialist. She's a longtime volunteer for the Red Cross and now has joined the staff, and we're going to visit with her about some of her experiences. And then on the second half of the show, we're going to be talking with Steve Barnes, and Steve was our Firefighter Award winner last year for our Lifesaver Awards, and so we're going to hear the story about how he was nominated and hear some other stories that Steve has had over the 30 plus years that he's been in the fire business. So, Kath, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dave.
Glad to have you here
with
us.
Glad to be
here. As most people that have watched this show know, what I'd like to do is we like to get to know the person that's sitting across from me. And so if you just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and about your background.
Well, I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Both my parents are from the Boston area, so lots of relatives all over. And I went off to college and grad school and so on, became a scientist. I'm a molecular biologist by trade, or by training anyway. Taught at various colleges, including Westminster and Fulton, where I live. And decided that I was done with that and ready to do some more volunteer type work. Got involved with the Red Cross.
And you've been volunteering with the Red Cross for how long?
About 2 years. And I kind of jumped in with both feet, got all my training done, went on deployment, and enjoyed that very much.
Let's talk about, you mentioned deployments, and for a lot of staff, and volunteers and staff are both called on from time to time to be deployed. So you've been deployed how many times?
2 large deployments, more than a week, and 3 small, just a few days.
Tell us about one of those.
Well, the first deployment was when I learned so much because I had never done anything yet. I just barely finished my training. So I went to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, where there'd been a dreadful tornado. Wrote lots of cases, learned other ways to help out with the Red Cross. I happened to be in a situation where I could take some of the online classes, so I could essentially get trained while I was working. And then, so I was also able to do computer entry. I got a couple of days handing out shovels, doing what we call bulk distribution, when the trucks literally drive around, look for tarps on the roof, and see if people need gloves, shovels, water, all kinds of things, tarps, cleanup kits. And then during the week I would write cases, so meet one-on-one with families affected by the tornado and see how the Red Cross could help them.
What's a typical day like that when you during casework when you're going out? How many people do you see in a given day, and what are some of the things that you talk about? Well,
the number of people depends a lot. If there are lines, you go faster than if you have time in between, and I've been there for both of those. We talk about things like, what was it like during the tornado? Most folks who've been through a disaster like this really want to tell their story. And a big part of what casework does is simply to listen to that story. In that process, we also record the address of the disaster. You know, what house were they in when the disaster happened, where they are now. So lots of contact information, the number of people in their family, and so on. And we try to figure out how we can best help them to recover. Usually, if they've lost their entire home, we're food, shelter, clothing. So we may give them a debit card, essentially, with some money to buy food. If they're in a shelter, one of the Red Cross supported shelters, they may not need that right away, but they will. And in
So the debit card, do they get the debit card when they leave the shelter, or do we give that to them while they're still there and we are providing their meals and housing for them?
It certainly can be while they're still there. Usually, if that's true, if they're still in the shelter, we would be giving them money, say, for clothing. So they still don't have any clothing except perhaps whatever used clothing they found in a box at the shelter. Mm-hmm. And so they definitely need to go start rebuilding their lives. And that's a big part of what casework is about, is to help people come up with a plan, even if it's just a plan for the next day. What are they going to do? Have they called the realtor? Have they turned off the electric bill? Did they get their kids a change of clothes? Things like that. So sometimes they're pretty shell-shocked, and what we're trying to do is to help them over that, help them to start moving forward.
I know one of the things that Philip Iman is one of our disaster specialists as well. One of the things that he has said that that client needs to take ownership of their recovery.
Definitely.
We can't do that for them. They've got to make those first steps.
Definitely, absolutely.
Okay. Tell me about we had a mock shelter here about a little over a year ago, and I know you were really involved in that. Let's talk about that for a minute, and then also talk about what that means and how that prepares our folks for that kind of situation.
Well, to be a Red Cross shelter, let's start at the beginning. It's one of my big projects in my new job. Basically, an organization, usually a church or a Lions Club, something like that, agrees to consider or agrees to agree to be a shelter in time of disaster. That doesn't mean we've got the keys and we can show up and kick them out. It means that if there's a disaster, say a tornado, large enough to actually open a shelter, we'd need several families to be wanting to do that. So we do the paperwork. Basically, we measure how many people could we fit in here in cots. It's a lot more efficient to do that than drive down the street after the tornado and literally look at that building and say, I wonder if they have a big room. It sounds silly, but those are our alternatives, really. So we need to measure spaces, find out how many bathrooms there are, and so on. So when you open a shelter, we are taking folks in who have no place to stay. Sometimes their entire neighborhood has been leveled. Sometimes it's a major apartment fire. A variety of disasters qualify. Occasionally here in Missouri, when there's a big ice storm, it might be cold and nobody's got power for heat. So anyway, the shelter operates. It gets opened by volunteers. We have a shelter manager. They've all gone through the shelter training course we have. And there's an intake process. We have to keep track of who's in our shelter. We need their contact information. And then when they come in, they are assigned a cot, and they take possession of that cot. There'll be usually a place that they can eat, not necessarily a place to cook. Sometimes the food's brought in from some other location. Very often there's a healthcare worker there, so if they have scrapes or something like that, they can be looked at. And frequently also some sort of counselor. Lots of disasters are very traumatic for families, and they need someone to talk to. So we try to provide as much of that as we can.
I know a little while ago you mentioned that when you're talking with some of those clients, you ask them about the tornado, and you ask them to explain and kind of talk about how they felt during that time. That's part of that recovery as well, and part of that being able to deal with that trauma. Being
able to talk about it, yes. I think, and many of my clients have said that just having someone to listen is a big part of that. You know, the first responders, police, fire department, whoever brought them to the shelter, they're fabulous, but they're also trying to move a lot of people very often. So they don't necessarily have time to sit with everybody. And so that's part of what we do.
Well, let's, the day we're taping this, I think Kath has been with us for 2 weeks. So first tell us about why you really wanted this job, and then kind of what some of your duties are.
I think even for a very long time, I've always wanted to be one of those people who, when there was a tornado or a typhoon in Haiti, I jumped on a plane. It's just one of those things I always wanted to do. I've done quite a few service projects and things through church and Habitat for Humanity, things like that. But with Red Cross, it's much more community-based. I mean, it's an ongoing process, and I've found lots to do as a volunteer. Moving in to be staff, was mostly because I really discovered that I liked the work. It felt very rewarding. It felt like it was fulfilling a need. And what I'm doing is working on preparing our communities all across the middle of Missouri for a potential disaster. And that's everything from finding shelters and measuring and keeping all that in a computer database, finding folks that are willing to be trained as volunteers, keeping those folks both trained and enthusiastic, training also volunteers to be caseworkers. The biggest response we actually do are single-family fires, something like 70,000 single-family fires in a year in the US. And so in the middle of the night when there's a fire, most fire departments in this area will also call the Red Cross to come and help the family.
Okay. And as far as your job description, if we were to look at what exactly does the disaster specialist, what exactly do you do besides setting up shelter agreements and training? You make contact with EMDs throughout the entire chapter and.
Right. The emergency management directors in each county are the folks that would call us to open a shelter. We don't just, a church can't call us to open a shelter. A client can't call us. So my job description at a large scale is to prepare the community for the disaster and help respond when there is one. At a smaller level, I do the shelter agreements. I do talk to emergency management directors. Basically, all of our organizations are partners. We are partners with folks who might donate food or prepare food for us, partners in all different ways. So it's setting up those relationships and nurturing them.
Yeah. Well, time has really gone by fast here. We are out of time, but Kath, I want to have you on again some other time later on in the future and hear more about this story, because I know that prepare, respond, and recover, those are the things that the Red Cross is doing right now. And that preparation piece is really key in getting those shelters set up and getting those volunteers trained and being able to respond to a disaster when it happens and not if it happens, because it is going to sometime.
Absolutely.
So, but Kath, thank you
Thanks
so
a lot.
much for
Thanks, Dave.
Stay with us. We'll be right back after a small break.
I'm Ann Littlefield,
I'm Claudia Kehoe.
and we're here to represent the Food Bank of Central and Northeast Missouri. Over half of the Missouri students qualify for free or reduced lunches at school during the week.
But on the weekends, many children go home to empty refrigerators.
The Food Bank provides buddy packs, backpacks full of nutritious food, so over 6,600 hungry children have food on the weekends.
But the need is much greater. Will you help?
When you adopt a buddy, you reach out to a child in need. Your 50 cents a day will make a difference in a child's life.
Visit www.sharefoodbringhope.org or call the Food Bank, 573-474-1020 to adopt a buddy.
Welcome back to Meet the Red Cross. I'm Dave Griffith, the Executive Director for the Heart of Missouri chapter, and joining me for the second half of our show is Steve Barnes, and Steve was our Lifesaver Firefighter Award recipient for last year's Lifesaver Awards. And Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you here. Well, as you've heard from the previous interview that I had, I'd like to get to know a little bit about who our guest is, and so I know you've been around in this area for a long time. You might just tell us about some of your history here.
Well, I've grown up here in Jeff City all my life. I went to school at Jeff City High School and did a couple years in the Marine Corps. Come back, had 3 daughters. I got about 8 grandkids hanging around here now. So got interested in the fire service, and that's where I'm at now.
So how long ago did you join the fire department?
I've been back in '78, about 30 some odd years ago, I guess.
And what prompted you to want to be a firefighter?
I had some friends that were on the department at the time, and there was 4 of us that decided that's what we wanted to do and kind of get out, see if we could help the public a little bit, and that was our way of giving back to the community. So,
well, the Lifesaver Award is how we got to meet you and know who you are. And so before you tell me the story about the incident that got you nominated, what was it like when you got the phone call that you had received the Lifesaver Firefighter Award?
it was kind of surprising to me because that's just something we're trained to do. We're a team out there. We all work together and try to train each other for this. If something like this happens, that you won't go off and leave one of your partners somewhere. So it was, it's a pretty proud moment to think somebody recognizes what we're doing out here.
How many firefighters do you have on the force?
There's approximately 70 of us out there now.
And are you all volunteers?
All volunteers.
Is anybody paid out there, or?
We do have a paid maintenance man, and that's, but he's also a volunteer fireman, so during the daytime he's the maintenance man, fireman, whatever we need. So.
And how many trucks do you have? And
right now we've got 8 stations located throughout the county. There's 4 trucks in those 7 of those stations, and then we have 2 trucks in the 8th station.
So how are you deployed? I mean, how do you know where to go?
We're notified through Jeff Central. They tone us out. Everybody's carrying a pager 24 hours a day or have a plectron in their house, and that tone alerts us to that we've got something coming up, and then they give us directions to where we're going, and whoever's available at the time shows up.
Those tones don't generally go off during business hours, do they?
They go, you never know, the worst, worst possible time sometimes, but that's all right. We jump up, might be 2 in the morning and might be at noon, just depends. Some people are working, can't get away, so the daytimes are usually a little rougher, a little less response, but we manage to get by.
Well, I know that many times you call our disaster specialists to get them to have volunteers respond. That's key to helping you in that situation?
That's really key. We really appreciate the work that you all do because, late at night or, if we've been there a long time, it's nice to have water or some kind of refreshments show up, and sometimes even sandwiches are really great. So we appreciate everything you do. It also gives us somewhere to send the people that, that have lost everything they have, someone to talk to and kind of guide them in the right direction.
What has been your experience with the Red Cross in the time that you've been working with us?
It's been a good experience. I mean, I think we have a real good relationship with your people, and we're able to call you, and it's a very short time. We've usually got 2 or 3 of your help there, and it's good to be able to do that.
Well, I know that you mentioned that sometimes we go out there to help the clients or those victims that have suffered that loss, but there are also times that you all have called us when you need us to canteen for a large fire that you've had, or if you've been out there, if teams have been out there all night, that we can bring you coffee or donuts or sandwiches or something.
Yeah, that's a big help because usually all of our personnel are busy, and it's just good to be able to call you and know that we'll get something there to feed everybody, keep them going, because sometimes those guys will kind of lay down if they're getting hungry, But,
well, I've seen that when I was deployed myself. I saw that we were not only helping those clients and those victims of that disaster, but those first responders, they're key to that recovery process as well, and being able to provide that assistance to them.
They really are. It's good to know you've got a whole team together there that you can call and get the help you need. So,
let's talk about the incident that it really got your nomination. It's a very intriguing story, and
Well, there again, that was a daytime fire, so we were pretty short-handed when we started out, and sent a couple guys in the house, and it was just going to be just a natural, everyday fire that we go to, and it went south on us pretty quick. The house filled up with smoke and had an explosion in the house, which caused the two guys inside got lost. They couldn't find their way back out, so I had to go in and look for them, and that was a pretty scary moment. I mean, you don't ever want to lose anybody in a fire, so was able to get them out. They were getting close, but I was able to step in the door and help them get out of the house, and everybody was okay, nobody was hurt, and we just regrouped, went back in, and did what we had to do. It was, like I said, it's a pretty scary moment when you have something like that happens.
Well, after the fact, and I know you've said this before, and it seems like the common thing that everybody says, I was just doing my job, but that you had an impact, and you saved 2 lives that day.
Yeah, it's, I mean, that's something we're trained to do. Everybody does it. I mean, you gotta, hopefully everybody's ready at that point to it doesn't feel like you're going in to save somebody's life. You're just helping them make sure they get out okay. But it was scary. It could have been a lot worse, if somebody wasn't out there. So.
Well, I know we talked before we went on the air. We talked about in the 30-plus years you've been doing this, there's a number of incidents that you've seen, and you certainly have not been gotten the public recognition for. But you told me about one incident that really was very near to you personally in your heart. It dealt with your daughter.
Well, that's something no fireman wants to do, is rescue one of your own. And my daughter was involved in a pretty bad car accident on 54 one evening, and had happened to be the first one to get there, and it turns out it was my daughter that was trapped in this car and another guy, and we went ahead and extricated her. I said, we got a good team of guys out there. They jumped right in, and as soon as we got her out of the car and in the ambulance, and I was asked to leave that scene and take care of her, but it was good. That's something you never want to do, that you'll never forget. But out of many, I mean, that's pretty scary when you find out it's one of your own trapped in a car there. So. Well, I know that that's got to be something that wears on you, and I think for a lot of us, I've got a question is, after an incident like that with your daughter, or after an incident like that with your 2 fellow firefighters, what are your feelings after that, and in a few days after that, and what cumulative effect does that have on you as a man? Well, I mean, it's something you don't forget. You put it in the back of your mind, and just like any other incident of anybody, you try to it goes in your little memory bank up there, and you go about your business. But it's still there every day. I mean, after that accident, I thought about it many times. That's something you don't ever want to do. But you can't just dwell on it. If you sit and dwell on it, you won't be able to do the job. So I don't know. We joke around amongst each other a lot, but that's just the way you deal with the things that happen. If you didn't, I think it just would eat you up. You talked about training, and I would assume, and I'm going to let you explain to us, but I would assume that a lot of the training that you have before a fire and before you respond to an incident like that helps you as firemen to be able to deal with that situation when you get there. Extremely. I mean, we train. You try to train on every situation that you can possibly think you'd come up against, but there's always something that's a little bit different from the training, and we do train every month. We have training officers, and we try to cover everything that we think possibly could affect any of us that are out there, and it requires a lot of training. Things are a lot different now than when we first started. I mean, there was probably 15 of us out there at first. Now there's 70 of us, and the materials and the houses are a lot different now. So cars are made a lot different. It takes a lot of training to keep up with the times.
So that training that you have, do you do training for like water rescue? Do you? I mean, we've got lakes from around here.
We have swift water rescue. We train on. Try to carry all the equipment we can on the trucks to accommodate that. Trench collapses. We try to train on that. As she was saying a while ago, the tornadoes in this area, we've tried to work some of those and try to keep track of where everybody's at and how to search for people, the search and rescue part of it. It pretty much covers everything that would be an emergency.
How much training do you do? Do you do it monthly? Do you do it weekly? How does that?
We do once a month with our department, and sometimes we'll have special training with a special meeting. There's different training through the university that we're also offered that'll take up like a weekend, a Friday and Saturday and Sunday, that you can go sign up for, and the department takes care of that training. There's lots of training out there if you can put all the time in. If you've got time to go, you can get some good training.
Well, I know Jefferson City has a big firefighter weekend where all firefighters from around the state come in.
The summer fire school.
Yeah.
They all come in and train. The Hyde Park training facility they have down there is very helpful. We go in there and do search houses. It's like it's smoked, the whole building full of smoke. You go in and practice finding something in there. So,
well, that practice must have worked out.
It works out good. I mean, it's good training. Rappelling, stuff like that.
Well, Steve, we've run out of time, unfortunately, but I want to thank you for what you have done for our county and for the citizens that live in Cole County. We so appreciate what you do, and you're very deserving of the award, and we look forward to having you come back to Lifesavers again this year and seeing who receives that award for firefighters this year.
Well, we appreciate everything you all do also, and thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much.
Okay.
Well, thank you for being with us on this edition of Meet the Red Cross. We'll see you again next time. And if you would like to volunteer to the Red Cross, you can give us a call at 635-1132 or stop by 431 East McCarty Street, and we'd be glad to visit with you. So until next time, thank you again for supporting the American Red Cross.